To Singapore now, where the number of new HIV cases has hit a record high, led by middle-aged heterosexual men. The government says most of the new infections were contracted through casual sex or sex with prostitutes. Many married men from the city-state travel to brothels on the Indonesian island of Batam. And as Susan Yu reports, there seems to be a belief that because the girls there are so young, it's safe to have unprotected sex with them.
Maswari bin Jungi and his wife Sadia are celebrating an Islamic festival with their family. The clan is comprised of 11 sons and daughters, more than 24 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. It's these kinds of domestic scenes the government wants to see more of, bigger households and family values being honored. But the reality here is that the nation's birth rate is on the decline, and some believe traditional principles are also at risk of eroding. While Singapore has several red light districts such as Desker Road, Geylang, and Orchard Towers, a growing number of local and mostly married men are traveling to Indonesia for cheap sex.
We are not making a moral judgment of men who engage in commercial sex. There's no judgment at all. What we would like to achieve is that men or this consumer exercise a moral responsibility before they engage in sex, that they ask themselves, how old is this girl? She looks young. Is she this young?
But the girl's age is one of the biggest attractions, along with the price for sex on the island of Batam. We were able to travel there with several regular Singaporean sex tourists. They head straight to a restaurant for cheap food and drinks. They say they don't carry any luggage to avoid arousing any suspicion by their families about their romps. Later, they head to a disco to pick out their girls for the day. Is this very common for Singaporean men to come to Batam for sex?
Well, I can say hundreds of people, hundreds of Singaporeans, for that matter, come to Singapore basically for sex and drinking. Only minority for business and playing golf, leisure.
And you don't worry too much about it?
Well, it's a norm to me. I mean...
Does your family know that you do this?
No way.
For a girl down here, it costs about $20 to $30. Where hereby in Singapore, it may cost about $70 to $150. And most of the girls, they came down from, the Indonesian island, maybe from Sumatra, or maybe from Jawa Tengah, or this sort of thing.
Elisa is from West Java. The youngster has been prostituting herself since 2002. Elisa is reluctant to disclose her age, but openly tells us a friend lured her to Batam. She says she leapt at the chance to support her impoverished family, but she had no idea what was in store.
Groggy.
My first time with the tent, I was so confused, sad and afraid. I thought about trying to go home. They're mostly from Singapore, some from Malaysia. Some are good, some bad. I've been beaten, asked to engage in violent sexual acts. It's very painful.
Elisa is not alone. Concerned groups say the majority of those selling their bodies are poor, uneducated, and underage. Activists say most, though, are trafficked by so-called agents who trawl Indonesia's poorest villages, offering impoverished families work for their daughters.
Usually they're tricked from the villages, promised a good job here in a restaurant or in a factory, but end up in prostitution.
Lola Wagner learned about the plight of Batam's young sex workers a few years ago and was compelled to try and help.
I remember a 15 or 14 years old girl. She was trafficked and she became crazy, lose her mind, and the system here was not ready to help her.
Now, an impromptu system is in place, with Wagner and her team of volunteers providing support and counseling for sex workers.
Are most of these women forced to be in prostitution?
They don't have option, yeah. They don't have option and they don't know where to go. So they stay there in the prostitution.
Why can't they just leave?
They cannot leave because they are threatened and they do not have a job to feed their families.
Husseini Tarmizi is one of YMKK's outreach workers. Never mind that he used to chauffeur sex workers to clients. And never mind that his wife owns and runs Batam's oldest brothel. He is now intent on turning a new leaf and helping the vulnerable.
When I first came to Batam, I used to drive the girls to clients and even help make bookings for the prostitutes. As time went on, I really felt sorry for them, and that's when I decided to become a volunteer. My wife has a brothel and her own girls. It's a problem for me, but when I see what she's doing, that motivates me even more to get her to educate her workers about safe sex and looking after their reproductive health.
No one knows exactly how many sex workers are here in Batam. It's estimated that 7,000 prostitutes are officially registered here, but many believe there are 3 times as many women selling themselves. If this is true, it's a sobering statistic.
Especially when you consider Batam has one of the highest HIV/AIDS rates in Indonesia. 4 years ago, there were officially 72 HIV cases in Batam. Today, the number has more than doubled.
I ask them to wear condoms, but if they don't want to, I have to agree, even though I might catch something. I try to protect myself by taking antibiotics the next day.
And this worries UNIFEM's Salima Ismail. She has been campaigning to raise awareness in Singapore about safe sex.
Well, I think it's an issue globally, everywhere around the world. There is some small percentage of men who perceive younger girls as being clean and AIDS-free and disease-free. That is a mindset, that's the myth that we want to debunk.
Singapore's Ministry of Health says 2004 saw the biggest increase in HIV infections since the disease first appeared in the country in 1985. It announced last month that 242 Singaporeans came down with HIV, with 4 in 10 developing full-blown AIDS.
That's one of the main concerns. Not only for men who engage in unprotected sex, they are hurting 2 families, not just families in Singapore, they're also hurting family in Indonesia.
Despite the efforts to educate the public on both sides of the strait, it seems the laws of supply and demand will continue to work overtime.